2 days ago, Sayadaw was explaining about the profound nature of Dhamma. And Sayadaw said, the opposite of the profound Dhamma, that is Nivarana or hindrances, are free. One can gain Supadaka. That means the things that is difficult to see will become clear to you. And with this respect, there are what we call Four Noble Truths. There are Four Noble Truths. They are, the first truth is the suffering, the truth of suffering. The second truth is the cause of suffering. The suffering is called dukkha in Pali. The cause of suffering is called samudaya. And third one is nirodha. And the fourth one is the path to the cessation of the suffering. It is called in Pali Magga Sakya. Now we can divide these four truths into two parts. The first two parts together and the second two parts together. The first two truths are more or less worldly. It belongs to the worldly affairs. And this first two we can call it Vetta Satya. The second part, which constitute the third and the fourth truth, it is more or less mundane, and it is called in Pali Vuvetta Sakya. So for those who are practicing meditation here, it is very important for you all to understand about these Four Noble Truths. From the first part, the truth of suffering, how one should understand and know about this is what is happening in our body, what arises, what disappears, are all the truth of suffering. If we have to expand this a little bit, apart from what is happening in our body, the things we see, the things we hear, the things we touch, the thing we know. In other words, what is happening in the six senses, the nama and rupa phenomena, they are all suffering.
This is check your message. You guys know, teach her the area near Tana, Missy Cheetah. That teacher. You took a decided diabolic. Means they are seeing a yaw. Missy Cheetah, my love, you take a for it. A saint yaw, new body. There are never took a decided diabolic. Me did, I mean, do it, I mean, Kanzara. That you got number say, took a decided diabolic.
To explain a little more, for example, at the moment of seeing something, the eye and the object you see, there is a strike in between them. So when there is a strike like this, it is also the truth of suffering. In other words, what we know as a result of seeing, what we experience as a result of seeing, these are all suffering. What is meant by dhatu is because it is going on by itself without the atta jiva involved. It is happening by ourselves. So in this case, there is a base, there is a element, and also the object to see. The object to see is more or less known as a striker. So when you have these three things, we can come to know as a result of seeing. Also, there is a contact between the eye and the object. In other words, we can experience something where there is a contact. So when there is a contact, we call it like a spark. So these things are all happening. It is also prominent. The base, the eye element, and the striking. So these are all suffering. If we have to go into a simile, there is a matchbox. On the matchbox, we have something like saltpeter. And at the tip of the matchstick, we have another something like what we call saltpeter. Now before this come into contact, nothing happens. But they have the characteristics to make a spark or a flame if they become are in contact. So if we look at this example, there is a base, which is a matchbox, and also there is a striker, which is the matchstick. So if you rub this matchstick against the matchbox, the spark or the flame comes up. Now similarly, when you see something, you can sort of analyze the scene if you compare this example, the knowing as a result of seeing, the contact as a result of seeing something, and also the ignition or spark as a result of seeing, they are all suffering. So this striking, ignition, they are happening by itself. This is what we know as the phenomena of dhatu. In other words, atta is not involved here. The atta that many people believe in is not involved in this process. So when it is happening by itself, because it is not atta, Buddha said it is anatta, opposite of atta. So this dhatu is what is really happening, what really occurs. But these elements or dhatu are not permanent. That is why Buddha said all these are suffering. So at the moment of seeing, there is a base, striker, and a contact. With this example, we have to know the Four Noble Truths distinctly, one apart from another. So if we say it is suffering, and if we say that one is difficult to see, we have to practice so that we will come to see. How do we see? The Buddha said we have to see the things that are difficult to see with Satipatthana meditation. If one does not practice Satipatthana meditation, it will be almost impossible to see this Four Noble Truths. So when one says it is difficult to see, we must realize that it is profound. But if we practice properly, we can see this thing clearly. it will become evident to us. If we do not contemplate an object at the moment of arising, we will not know about the object. In Pali, it is called dukkha anyanta. Dukkhi anyanta. In other words, not knowing, or avijja. Avijja is opposite of vijja, which can be translated as knowledge. The avijja are twofold: apati pati avijja, micca pati apijja. Micca pati apijja. The first apati pati avijja is not knowing something the way they are. And micca pati pati is knowing the opposite way. Now, if we do not contemplate on the object, these two together can come up in ourselves. So, because the truth of suffering, the suffering is difficult to see, if we do not practice properly, if we do not contemplate properly, we will not come to know that it is suffering. So if we do not know, what can happen is we can know the opposite. In this way, what is supposed to be suffering, what is really suffering, we can take it as the opposite, or we can say it is good. We will think it is good. For example, when we see something, there is a striker, contact, and the ignition. These are all suffering. But if we do not contemplate on it, we will realize that all these things are good to us. So, macca pati pati is seeing the things the wrong way. So, that is why if we do not practice properly, these two avijja can come up with not knowing the things as they are and knowing the wrong thing, the wrong way. The simile here is an eye which is having cataract. Now, if we have cataract in our eye, we will not see things as they are. Even if we see a little bit, we may see it upside down, the wrong way. Because the eye knowledge, which really sees the things as they are, has been blocked. That is why we do not see things as they are, and even if we see, we may see it upside down. So, when we see something, there are three elements involved, which the other has explained already. If we do not contemplate on a seeing, we will not come to know. So if we do not come to know, the thing which is really suffering, we will think it is pleasant. That means our knowledge has slipped off. And if we do not contemplate on any of the three elements at the moment of seeing, what can happen is, in Pali, it is called vipalasa, knowing the sleep and then the mind sleeping. In other words, we come misconception, saying the wrong way, perversion.
proportion.
Yeah. What is really suffering will come to know as the pleasant. In other words, the evil thing we come to know as good thing. That is why we will not come to know the real thing. So, in other words, this is not knowing is the cause of suffering. And it is in Pali, he calls samudaya this Satya. The cause, the truth of cause of suffering. And this is also difficult to see. It is profound. So coming back to the movement of saying something, there are three elements involved: the base, contact, and the ignition. So if we do not contemplate on it, we will come to know as pleasant. We will crave for this. We will want this kind of things. So in order to not to happen this, what we have to do is to note on the object as it comes up. For example, if our mind wanders, we have to note wandering. If we think, we have to note rising, falling, we have to note touching, we have to note bending, stretching, we have to note them all. As we do the walking meditation, lifting, forwarding, dropping, we have to note. Even blinking of the eyes, we have to note. Then only we will come to know the truth. But if we do not contemplate like that, we can have what you call dukkha anatta, not knowing, and knowing the wrong way, misconception. So if we have this not knowing and misconception, every time we hear something, we see something, we touch something, we will have the wrong notion that these are all pleasant, good for us. Therefore, craving, lobha will arise. So, the things that is happening at the sixth sense doors, if we do not note on them, we will not come to know about them, and we will have misperception about that. We will think that that is happening, the six sense doors are all pleasant, but it is really the cause of the suffering, not knowing. So if we know it as the cause of suffering, we should realize that it is the Dhamma that we should discard. Now if we do not contemplate, if we do not discard, this not knowing and wrong perception, they will not remain unchanged. They will increase more and more, and what will happen is, from the immature form, it will come up to intermediate form, and also at the lastly, things will come under a situation whereby we do not have any control anymore. So if we know that this is something we have to discard, we have to discard. But discarding, there are two ways to do it. First, not to let it happen. Second, if it happens, we have to, as I said, discard it, take it out. Now, for example, the lobha, the craving. It is the best if we can prevent it from happening. Prevention. But if we cannot prevent it, it's going to happen. When it happens, what is the method? It is the curing method. How to cure it? By noting a way. To know about the suffering distinctly, there are 4 ways we can do it. First, we call it Savana. That is knowing the truth of suffering distinctly. Samudaya, we have to prevent it from happening. So, at first what we have to do is, when we come to the mud talks like this, we have to listen with respect. We have to study with respect. And then we have to hold it in our heart so that we will not forget it. It is called dharana. That will not do. As a step further, what we have to do is, if things are not clear, we have to discuss with the meditation teacher. We call it paripocha. So during the interviews, you can put it up to your teacher, and from the teacher you will get the way, and you have to study the way. And the last part is called samasana. It is more or less what you are doing now. Contemplation on the object. What is really happening when we contemplate this? We are trying to rub our mind with the object. The first 3 parts are more or less theoretical, and only the last part, the contemplation, is the practical way. The first 3 parts, as Sarah explained, in Pali it is called Suttamaya Jnana. In other words, the knowledge that you get as a result of hearing from somebody else. Or it can be a knowledge gained by thinking out. But by this method, we cannot know the paramata or the abstract truth. Now, if one wants to know the abstract truth, the things that are there, really there, we have to note by contemplating. We have to note with mindfulness. We have to note persistently, seriously. Then only we will come to know, we will have the knowledge derived from your own practice. And if we have this own practice, what will happen is, we will come to know that things are not suffering, things are suffering, things are not permanent. We will come to know the phenomena of cause and effect. In other words, the knowledge that is derived from your own practice. There are Dhamma talks like this almost every day, so that yogi will come to know, or at least the theoretical part. And then you have a chance to discuss with your meditation teacher. so that you will come to know how to practice better. When you come to know about this, you will be noting all the phenomena, all the objects, rising, falling, sitting, touching, hearing, seeing. In other words, the things that are always happening. So you have to note this object at the moment of arising. The arising here means all the object that arises. You have to be mindful on them with aiming, focusing, with diligence. Then it is the job of the yogi. So if you practice like that, the dukkha sakya, or the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, although they are difficult to see, you will come to know about it clearly, because you have practiced properly. So this dukkha sakya and samudaya sakya will be seen by you in your mind and clearly. It will become prominent to you. So the first two truths Sayadaw has explained to you quite a bit, and you have come to know quite a bit. The last two truths, Sayadaw said, you need not bother. It is not really bother when it is mundane, super mundane. So if you only know that it is good for you, it is good enough already. You do not need to go and ask your teachers about this. You do not need to discuss about this. And just by knowing that it is good for you, it is good. Now those noble persons, if they contemplate on it, it is okay. But for the beginning yogis, if they only know that it is good for them, that is quite enough already. Now today, Sayadaw has completed 1 hour of talk, and next time, Sayadaw will explain to you about this more, combining the theory as well as practical aspects of it. So today, may you be able to know, or may you be able to contemplate on the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, although they are difficult to see. May you be able to see them clearly by practicing properly. That's all for today.